before we start arguing what the facts are, what the facts are not, I think we have to look at what does someone feel about a situation, because that nobody cares about facts. Even the people who argue, with facts, they're coming from a perspective. They have a lens, and there's always another set of facts that is worth considering, because nothing's just simple. And so that's kind of the caveat I was talking about. Like, there's concrete truth, but concrete truth often has two different sides, And so I think anytime you start talking about data, there's always going to be one, because of perceived truth and because of the emotions that get involved with it, data is often corrupted. And so there's something that looks like data, and then there's something that's actual data.
Welcome to Contentious Talks, a weekly podcast where we talk to influencers, celebrities, politicians, and everyday people to show that we all have unique perspectives, and that's a great thing. I'm your host, Ryan Malinoski, and this week we're talking to Ken Reid. Hey, Ken, how you doing?
Good. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, tell me a little bit about yourself, Ken.
Tell you. I am Ken. I'm a husband and father and writer and copywriter, and live in Tyler, Texas, and I don't know, play music and lots of stuff. What do you want to
know? Let's start with what you're most passionate about.
As far as doing, probably split down the middle between music and writing, just content creation and stuff. My job is I'm a copywriter. I write verbiage for websites for local businesses, service businesses, stuff like that. And then kind of passion project, I write for a couple blog publications as well as my own blog and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Where'd you grow up?
Grew up in Bessemer City, North Carolina.
Okay.
I always have a hard time not going back into my redneck accent when I say that, North Carolina. But
what brought you to Texas?
I was a part of a Christian internship. Did that. That was in Garden Valley, which is, you won't find that, but it's, in the Tyler vicinity, about 30 minutes away.
Barely on the map.
Yeah. And
quite literally. Barely on a map.
Yeah. And so I stuck around.
Cool.
Been here for 9 years since leaving.
Okay. So you said you're married. Did you say you had kids?
I do have kids.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're dad. You're married. You do copywriting. How'd you get into copywriting?
So when I was a part of the internship, I played in a band, and we traveled around with a big old youth conference doing worship for a couple thousand teenagers every weekend. And so I was like, I'm going to be a rock star. And then
that worked out, right?
Yes, yeah, for sure. Therefore, I'm a copywriter. No, so yeah, I left that eventually, and it was super cool because I felt half famous, but they didn't pay me anything, and so it's like I should probably go get money if I want to marry a piano player, which I did. So I went and got a regular old job with no skills, no education, whatever, and anyway, refused to give up on my my music dreams for a while, but finally just kind of was like, I got to do not what I want to do, but what's in front of me, but still pursuing some sort of passion for creativity and stuff like that. And so really just started blogging. I was like, hey, it's, pretty cheap to start a WordPress blog. And so I started one, built a little, crappy website and all that stuff. And it I don't know if took off is the right way to say it, but it got more traction than I expected it to. And got a couple pretty cool opportunities, some cool paid gigs with a couple Christian publications and things like that. And so So yeah, I was like, this is cool. And eventually, at some point, I met a freelance web designer at my church who told me that he was looking for a copywriter to do the words for the websites he builds. And I was like, I mean, I write other stuff. Why not? Let's give it a whack. And so, so I did like a gig and a half or something like that. And then I decided, hey, I'm a copywriter. And so,
There you go.
So yeah, I put together some kind of resume with, good stuff, and happened to meet a guy that was like, hey, my web design company that I work for is looking for a copywriter. So it was all, kind of fell into my lap, at least to a certain extent.
Sounds like one thing led to another.
Yeah, for sure. So
were you passionate about writing when you were younger?
No, not at all. Not writing or reading or anything like that. But I think I've always been passionate about creating and communicating.
Okay.
And so, that was early on music and writing music, playing music, and then eventually that became content,
Right. Right on, man. How long have you been married?
8 years.
8 years, and how old are your kids?
They are 5.5 and almost 3.
5.5 and almost 3.
Got
cool.
a little man, a little woman.
Cool. Boy and a girl.
Yes.
So you said you're a musician as well.
I am a musician. I mostly play bass, at least when I play with a band or whatever. It's usually bass. I play guitar as well, and my wife sings, plays piano. We're a musical family.
Okay, cool. What got you into that?
Well, the first time I remember ever deciding I was going to become a musician was I was 12. My dad was a youth pastor, volunteer youth pastor, and he put out, I don't know if you remember back in the day when if you wanted to recruit people, you would print out a 8.5 by 11 sheet and cut up the bottom where you could pick off the phone numbers or whatever.
Right.
And so anyway, he posted in a couple of music shops looking for a worship band. And so a husband and wife duo, the husband played guitar and sang, the wife played drums.
Okay.
We're like, yeah, we're interested. And so they jumped on. They were like, the only thing I'm missing is a bass player. And I was like, sure, why not? And so that was 12, 31 now. And yeah, I've been playing bass ever since.
Okay. Do you write any of your own stuff, or?
Yeah.
I would imagine that the writing passion that you found and the musical passion go hand in hand together pretty well.
Yeah, for sure. Really, I guess songs was the first thing that I ever wrote. Way before I ever considered anything like just writing verbiage, or content creation or whatever. It was songwriting. And so I'm really not a good singer, but I write pretty decent songs and just make other people sing them.
That's you in a nutshell?
That's me. That's what else could you possibly want to know? I am way too into myself. I think most people think I'm super chill, but which I am. I'm super chill, but if you put me in front of people, I want to be the star of the show. I probably shouldn't be, but I want to be.
Okay.
So, ever since I was 3 years old at daycare, and for the Christmas pageant was the star of their big old Christmas tree looking platform or whatever. I was literally the star, and they were like, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and I was just at the very wrong times in the song, like a light bulb. So ever since then, I've been like, I need to be in front of people. So content creation is not. There's the artists that are like, no, I just do it for the art, and I'm like, I do it for the show. I really do. I'm sorry. That's so insincere. I do.
So you get a lot of meaning and value out of knowing that people are reading the words that you wrote?
Yeah. It's if I don't have an outlet where people are going to see it and appreciate it, or even hate it, I'm totally cool with that. But get some sort of feedback, then I'll give up on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's part of what drives you then?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think knowing that it's having some sort of impact. I don't know. I almost want to say, probably not completely true, but I almost want to say I'd rather have a negative impact than no impact at all. But that's probably not entirely true.
I mean, from a marketing perspective, even a negative impact is oftentimes positive.
Yeah.
So does your family still live on the East Coast?
Yeah. Yeah, they're in North Carolina, in Gastonia. Yep. Moved from Bessemer City to Gastonia, which is like 10 minutes away or something. So yeah, that's been them for my whole life.
Did you grow up with any siblings?
Yeah, I've got a younger sister. She is 10 years younger than me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I left when I graduated high school for the internship in Texas, and so I was 17, and so she was 7. So most of our relationship has been long distance, but yeah, I always enjoy hanging out with her and talking to her when I can.
Cool. What was it like growing up in North Carolina?
So, North Carolina is interesting. Okay. So, for me, North Carolina equals small, ugly town. Pretty podunk. I grew up in a very, very small town of a small, kind of county and everything. And so for me, North Carolina means like, do you want to go to Walmart, McDonald's, or the local mall with like the coolest thing there is a Hot Topic, So that's my idea of North Carolina. And then I meet other people that I say, hey, I'm from North Carolina. And they're like, dude, North Carolina is so cool. And I'm like, what? I had a friend from Canadian recently say, dude, I love North Carolina. I went on my honeymoon there. I was like, what in the world? And so there's basically North Carolina. People probably think of one of three things. They either think like the beach, just the cool East Coast side of things. They think of the mountains.
Yep.
They think of the big city. But then there's this fourth area, which is like small podunk Gastonia area, North Carolina. That's where I'm from. So when most people say North Carolina, they're meaning something different than I mean.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So for me, it's not just a small town, but very, very small community. I was at the same church all my life with until I moved away, with probably on a good week like 50 people.
Okay.
I went to the Christian school of the same church with about 20 kids, kindergarten through 12th grade, 20 kids. And so for me, North Carolina is like, it's the memories of, I tend to be I'm pretty chill, but I really like to be around people. I'm extroverted in that sense. And so for me, North Carolina is kind of marked by boredom in some ways, I just want to be around people.
So you grew up in the least cool part of North Carolina.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Yeah. Right on. I understand what you're saying. I've driven through there quite a bit and never had a desire to stop. So
that's fair.
It's usually my litmus test. Do I want to stop here or not? So not because I'm afraid or anything, but is there anything to stop here for?
Yeah. So there are places to stop for, but North Carolina's got some very specific areas.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have any big dreams, like moving forward, next steps in life? Like, is there anything on the horizon for you that you're excited about and working towards?
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel like the copywriting gig and doing that for a living, it's been for several years a side gig. And so actually being able to create for a living is it's a pretty new concept to me. To be able to do that full time. I've been doing that, some version of that, for about a year. So that's been super cool. And so yeah, I think that I'm kind of settling into that and getting used to it. But yeah, I mean, I've always got something bigger, something, I love what I do, and yet it feels like a stepping stone, and so, I mean, I would love to be in a bigger city. I just think that there's tends to be more opportunities, although Tyler's got some pretty cool opportunities. But yeah, I don't know. I think, to me, I love what I do, being able to, I write for predominantly local companies, service-based companies and stuff, which is super cool, just to be able to like support local business in a very tangible way, by essentially marketing their product for them through search engine optimization and all the getting them to the first page of Google and all that stuff. But I think I would definitely love to use my powers for good, in the sense of writing for, being able to write and create for some sort of nonprofit. For better or worse, I don't know. I feel like you probably understand this. I could change the world. And so then you leave that and you just do a 9 to 5, and it's like, there's got to be more than this, right? I don't even know if that's a good or bad thing, but that's in there. And so
it's a real thing.
Yeah, so yeah. It's hard to not always be craving that in some shape.
For sure. So talk to me about your blog. What's your blog called, and what do you typically write about? What's the focus of that?
So it's honestchristian.org. .com was taken. So I guess I'm stealing something from somebody. But anyway, honestchristian.org. It's basically just my way of trying to be honest about doubts and fears, and I think that's a big thing that Christians tend to not be very honest about. There's kind of a and gotta look the part, play the part, that kind of thing. And so for me, I'm just like, I feel like a lot of people are thinking things that they're not saying, and so I just want to kind of be a voice in essentially just saying, hey, it's okay to doubt, to try to work through things, to figure things out, to say, I don't know if this is right or wrong, but here's how I feel, and that's legitimate. So just being an honest Christian.
Gotcha. You'd said how you weren't expecting the type of response that you got from starting out, I guess. How long have you been doing the blog?
So I basically started the year that my daughter was born, so that was 2017. I'll say I started consistently. I'd done a couple runs or whatever before then, but yeah, I started consistently about 3.5 years ago, I suppose. And so yeah, basically it was just like, yeah, I'll start blogging. I've got some ideas. I got some words I think I should say or whatever. And eventually was able to get published by a company called Relevant. And so I was, did some stuff for their blog, pretty big Christian publication, and then started writing for a publication called Heart Support and a publication called Lightworkers. And so a couple paid gigs, they pay in influence type gigs, but yeah, it was just really cool to see, stuff that I wrote that otherwise no one would really read, but then I'd be able to write it and publish it on a larger platform, and get thousands of people giving feedback and things like that, and just a really cool, like, wow, okay, people care. And it's just interesting to see the things that you assume everybody's going to be on board with and get backlash from it. And I don't know, just learning a lot of things, forming some interesting relationships, having interesting online conversations. People, I don't know, I feel like I say things, I'm like, oh, here's this opinion that I have, and then someone sends you a private message and starts asking about well, what do you think about this? And I'm like, whoa, I wasn't actually trying to give you advice. I was just saying my opinions or whatever. And so people actually start taking you serious. That's almost more scary than people passing you off.
Sure.
Yeah, so I don't know, it was interesting, but yeah, definitely took off in an interesting way. And so ended up writing one post about porn addiction and stuff that took off as far as on Google. It ended up at number 2 position on that particular search or whatever on Google. And so it was at one point up to 10,000 people reading it every month. So it'd be, people started subscribing to my email list, and got almost 2,000 email subscribers, and people asking me hey, I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with that, what do I do? And I was like, whoa, I just wanted to, that's all I have to say. I don't, read the blog, that's all I've got. And so
I'm not a therapist.
Yeah, just really trying to figure out, how do I help people, what do I say, now that I'm actually responsible not just for giving an opinion, but how someone's going to interpret something and it turn into grace versus shame or whatever,
right.
Especially in an area like that. And so very interesting. But yeah, so it's been really cool to get some of those opportunities and stuff.
So how did getting published come about? Did they reach out to you? Did you reach out to them?
No, I reached out to them. Yeah,
Okay.
I thought I had something worth saying, so it's like that was the initial. So the first one with Relevant Magazine, I reached out to them, and it's like, hey, publish this blog post, please. It's awesome, and got crickets. And so then I did it again a few weeks later, and nothing. Did it. I mean, probably the fourth or fifth time I was like, nobody's ever going to respond to this. And finally, the fourth or fifth time someone responded, was like, yeah, I'll publish it. It's like half a sentence, yeah, I'll publish this. And then I was like, huh. So, but that happened several, 12 times maybe since then. And then there was a couple other publications that would reach out or, in some way, shape, or form. And so got a couple other gigs and cool opportunities through that and stuff, just people seeing it that way.
So was it once you had that first thing published, was it easier? Was it harder to find things? You said that after that some people started coming to you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that Relevant pays in influence, and so they're like, we have a big platform. People will find out about you or whatever, so they're not going to pay you anything. But I got a paid gig through that. Somebody, a new publication that was starting that reached out to me and was like, hey, we've seen some of your stuff and, really want to bring you on as a contributing writer on ongoing paid gig, and everything. And so that was kind of really the first opportunity that I ever had that I was like, oh, somebody wants to give me money for my words. Yeah. And that's kind of where it all started. I think now I've changed. To me, I'm more interested in the perspective. I guess you can call it empathy. I don't really consider myself much of an empathetic person, but I think this approach is an empathetic approach, which is I don't really care to convince you or even convince myself that something's right or wrong. I'm more interested in hearing where you're coming from, because I'm like, so I'll just say it like this. I feel like growing up, and even into part of my adult years, I would ask something. For example, I tend to be pro-life and stuff, and so I would ask somebody, why do Democrats or liberals or whatever believe in abortion? And the answer was because they're idiots. And I'm like, okay, really? Like they're just idiots, like all of them? And so for me, I'm like, okay, I can tell you what I believe about this, but I want to know. I guess just starting from the perspective of, okay, let's assume you're not an idiot. Where are you?
It's very gracious of you.
Yeah,
it's like, very gracious.
Yeah, of you. And so that's just that's my perspective.
There are not many people operating from that point of view.
Yeah. But that's really, it's just, I feel like any questions that I would ask like that was always the response. There was just some stupid response like, oh, because they're morons.
Right.
Because they're liberals, because they're whatever. And I'm like,
well,
so I think just listening, not even from the perspective of I'm willing to hear you out and listen and change my mind. I wouldn't even say I was that humble. Just enough to say, I'm willing to assume you're not a moron. And from that, there was a lot of things that changed my, not only perspective, but like actual beliefs,
Right. And
so, but yeah, it's just interesting when you actually take the time to go, okay, let's just assume. I'm not going to say like assume that you're right, assume that maybe you have information I don't know, but just bare minimum, just assume you're not an idiot. Let's have a regular conversation.
Do you have something to say? Then consider being on the show. Go to contentioustalks.com/guest and apply today. That's contentioustalks.com/guest to apply. Now back to the show. Awesome, Ken. Well, thanks for sharing a bit about your story and your life. I certainly appreciate it. Mm-hmm. What we're going to do next is everybody's favorite part of the podcast. Mm-hmm. It's called the Tough 12.
The Tough 12.
The Tough 12. There's 12 questions here, 3 categories, 4 questions each category. First is politics. You ready?
I'm ready.
What is a fair society?
Whoa.
Whoa.
I don't like vague questions. Give me like straight questions.
That's a straight question.
What is a fair society?
Yeah, how would you define a fair society?
I mean, I think I'm somewhere in between liberalism and libertarianism.
Okay.
And so yeah, I mean, I think that I would say, as it pertains to my freedom of choice, like what I do, I would say until it infringes upon someone else's rights, kind of leave me alone, And I would say that, like, there's a lot of things that personally I'm not for, but then politically or legally, I'm like, no, I think that this is important, that this should be legal. Like drugs, I don't smoke marijuana, but I think that it should be absolutely legal, because I think the idea of someone being locked up for, smoking dope, I'm like, that's so stupid. Like, that's just, that to me, that's just a money market. And so I would say that that's at least a big step toward a fair society. That I think that so that's the libertarian side of me, and the liberal side of me, I suppose, is wants people to be taken care of, and I personally tend to think that, I don't know that I would completely say the government has that responsibility or that mandate, but I'm like, why wouldn't we do that? Like, I think the government is most, I'm going to get tons of people rolling their eyes at me, but I think the government is most equipped, just in the sense of they have access to everyone, to be able to distribute some of that fairness. And I'm not necessarily talking about wealth, but just, whether it's healthcare or just not being put in a cage because you came across a border trying to find safety, or whatever it is. I just think that in general, you should be respected. Your rights should be respected as a human, and that to whatever degree is not unreasonable. If someone can be taken care of, they should be.
Gotcha. Awesome. What is the number one issue facing society, humanity, however you want to look at it?
I don't think that there is a one issue, but I would say, okay, I'll say if there's like one big issue, it's got a lot of different faces and a lot of different symptoms. But I would just say the idea of really just kind of what I was saying before, the idea of a lack of empathy, not understanding or seeking to understand where someone else is coming from. I think just is really responsible for creating injustice and racism and extreme classes, extremely rich, extremely poor, things like that. I think just a lack of empathy.
So trying to understand.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That's pretty succinct. I like it.
Yeah.
That's great. Do politics matter, Ken, and why?
Politics do matter. I feel like I almost want to answer like, do politics matter to me? Politics matter as much as they affect individuals, which ultimately, all politics, at least to some degree, do. But I mean, for me, to me, politics has social implications, and that's ultimately all I care about. So if you're going to talk to me about taxes and stuff, I'm going to get really tired. But if you're going to talk to me about, who taxes are helping or not helping, or who they're, whose pockets they're boosting or not boosting or whatever, then I think that's where I'm going to really say, okay, this is a conversation that matters. I think to whatever degree politics affects life, someone's life and livelihood, is where politics matters.
Right on. What do you believe in terms of what role the government should play in our lives?
So yeah, I mean, I think kind of what I said before. I think that I tend to be liberal in the sense of I think if someone can be taken care of reasonably, they should be, and I think that if that we should have as much freedom as possible until it infringes upon someone else's freedom. And so I think that the government should, or at least ideally would, give as much freedom as possible. The only people in jail are in jail for violent crimes or because they're a danger to society, and that the goal, as much as possible, is to rehabilitate them and bring them back into society if that is at all possible. That they shouldn't be killed pretty much under any circumstance. I don't really believe in capital punishment. And then on the other side, I think that I don't think that it's unreasonable to let me. I don't know that I would say I'm full on let's do welfare, but I think the idea that someone feels like they're about to have a heart attack and then they have to think about how much they're going to pay just shouldn't be a decision that somebody has to make. As far as should I go to the emergency room or just hope for the best, I don't feel like that's a decision someone should ever have to make. I feel like it should. So I probably am at least open-minded to the idea of things like healthcare and other things like that being distributed to the degree that it can be without breaking, without full-on robbing other people, no matter how rich they are. Basically, I'm just indecisive on about everything. Or you can call it moderate or indecisive. It probably looks about the same.
Right on. Well, that was politics. Here comes philosophy. What is truth, Ken?
So truth has two faces. There's concrete truth, and there is perceived truth. We were kind of talking about that earlier. Concrete truth is the facts. It's the here's what happened, here's the data, here's what is. It can be analyzed, it can be falsified. Falsified, well, you can prove it whether it's right or wrong. And then there's kind of a caveat to that. I'll get back to that in a second. But then there's perceived truth, and I think that concrete truth is what matters in the sense that it's what's real. But I would actually argue that perceived truth matters more as far as how it affects society, because an idea, I read this once, an idea is not popular because it's true. An idea is popular because it's interesting. And, I think that's, I don't know, I feel like that's important, is before we start arguing what the facts are, what the facts are not, I think we have to look at what does someone feel about a situation, because that nobody cares about facts. Even the people who argue, with facts, they're coming from a perspective. They have a lens, and there's always another set of facts that is worth considering, because nothing's just simple. And so that's kind of the caveat I was talking about. Like, there's concrete truth, but concrete truth often has two different sides, And so I think anytime you start talking about data, there's always going to be one, because of perceived truth and because of the emotions that get involved with it, data is often corrupted. And so there's something that looks like data, and then there's something that's actual data. For example, the whole, whites get killed by police way more than blacks, and so the end. And they give you the numbers, whatever the numbers are. Like, I don't know what the numbers. I don't remember what the numbers are, but it's like per year, however many thousands of people that get killed by police, white, versus hundreds or whatever the number is, black. And it's like, oh, well, yeah, so this isn't a race issue. And then you look at, okay, hold on. Let's look at percentages. If blacks make up 13%, from what I think that's right, of our population, yes, they're going to be getting killed at a lower rate, or fewer numbers. But as far as the rate is concerned, they're actually disproportionate to how often they should be killed. And so you can present this set of facts with the hard numbers, and it looks one way, and then you can present the percentages, and it's like, oh, actually, yes, fewer blacks are killed than whites, but they're killed at 2.5 times the rate as whites. And so that's a whole other. It's just one of many examples that I feel like I've seen. You get the little memes and stuff. Here's the numbers, and then it's like, then you get another meme. Oh, actually, here's the numbers fixed. And I just think there's concrete truth, but I feel like in most cases, someone's trying to twist the concrete truth with some kind of agenda.
I can definitely agree with that. Cool. What do you believe about people's ability to change?
I mean, if I didn't think people could change, I guess I would be a hypocrite. I feel like in the past 10 years, 10, 15 years, I've changed a ton. Yeah, I mean, to me, again, I feel like it all comes back to empathy and understanding someone else's perspective. If you stop worrying as much about, not worrying, I think so let me say it this way, kind of go back to the whole truth versus perceived truth, or data versus feelings. I feel like data can back up what you believe, but I don't think in most cases it drives what you believe. I feel like stories drive what you believe. So when you actually meet someone, you're much more likely to understand their perspective than reading about them, or hearing about them, or the infamous they, or whatever. And so yeah, I think that just understanding where someone's coming from changes people. But let me caveat that there's a big difference in changing your beliefs and changing your actions. And I think habits and addictions, I feel like that's a whole different conversation. And changing them is not impossible, but it's really, really freaking hard. And for a lot of people, it seems pretty near impossible. And so, yeah, I think it's easier to change your beliefs than your actions. Yeah.
Got it. How do you explain consciousness?
Consciousness or conscience?
Consciousness.
Consciousness. Like the idea of being alive?
Sure.
Man, I can't explain that at all. I don't know. I mean, I think I tend to think that we're kind of at least 2-part, maybe 3-part person. There's kind of a spirit, soul, body type thing where I think people lean more toward one or the other. I heard, I don't remember who it is. Is it Christopher Hitchens that he died, right?
I don't know who that is.
I think it's Christopher Hitchens. He's a really, really famous guy for being an atheist, famous for not believing in God, which is what it is. But I think it was him that he wrote a book just talking about kind of his final days, final months, whatever it was. And one of the things that he said was he would hear doctors talk about he'd hear the doctors that are kind of working on him and everything saying things like his body's failing him, and kept referring to it as his body, and so the body is something that belonged to him rather than being him. And at some point he just kind of gets all riled up and he's like, stop saying his body, I am a body, and so that's a very specific worldview, I guess, that this is all we are, it's just parts, and then there's another side of the worldview that says really ultimately what I am is a soul or a spirit or whatever you want to use, and so this body's just a suit, it's just kind of like clothes, and so the real me is on the inside or whatever. You can't see it, and I actually don't believe that either of those extremes are helpful. I think that I am really this person that you're looking at, but yet there's something inside of me that's animating me that isn't just my brain and my heart. it's something there that can't be found with an autopsy. But and so there's really those two that work together that give consciousness.
All right. So what exactly makes you you then?
What makes me me?
What makes you you?
Everything from DNA to experience. I mean, as far as my personality, I guess. I think that I don't know. I've heard people try to argue like, was it nature or nurture? Like, was it what you were born this way or you were conditioned this way? And I really don't think it matters. I think that all of our experiences, as well as our heritage, our DNA, our history, our family line, our culture, like all of them come together to form this person that is in some ways unique and in some ways exactly like everybody else. But yeah, I mean, I think that what makes me me is the experiences I've had and the things that are, I don't know, unexplainable that I was just born with, DNA and all that stuff.
Now, last category here, Ken. Personal/religion. What do you believe about God?
I think that God is in one sense understandable, in another sense like beyond understandable. I believe that we are made in His image, and so when you look at each other, you get a better idea of who God is and what He's like. And yet, I think that there's so many things that are far beyond about God that are just far beyond what we can understand and how we see things. And so, to me, what I believe about God. Is that right?
Yes.
So, I think as a Christian, I feel like ultimately what I believe about God, or maybe I should just say whether I believe that God exists and is the God that I believe in, ultimately comes down to Jesus and primarily the resurrection. I think I hear a lot of people try to argue intellectually that God exists by saying that we can look at creation and surely this had to have had a creator and blah blah blah, and or different angles different people will try to take. The Bible is true or whatever, and I'm not opposed completely to any of those as far as agreeing with them, but I don't think that any of those to me definitively prove anything. I think to me the safest, the thing that I depend on in the moments of my biggest doubts of whether I'm maybe worshiping the right God, whether I'm just wrong about all of this, whether there is a God at all, ultimately comes down to hard facts that I can hold on to in the moments of I just don't know, is ultimately comes down to the resurrection. Is it reasonable to believe that Jesus really rose from the dead? And if He did, what are the implications? And I think really even outside of the Bible, especially outside of the Bible, I think that I just have so much reason to believe that event really happened, and that means something for what I believe and how I live.
Awesome. What do you believe happens after death?
I have no idea. I believe that after death, I think we're still somewhere. I think that there's after death, and then there's like kind of the end, like the very, very end of history or whatever, which is kind of a new beginning or whatever. And so I think that after death, there's, I don't know, kind of this holding place where I don't know that I necessarily believe in the kind of Middle Ages the hell is fire and heaven is clouds type thing. But I think that there's some sort of separation between the people who want to be with God and the people who just really didn't, And I think that God kind of gives them what they want in that sense, and so. But I think that that's kind of a temporary, like a holding place, whatever that place or condition or state is. I think ultimately, to me, what matters much more is the very end, which is resurrection. The idea that just there's going to be a renewal where that thing that's in all of our souls, when we see horrible things in society, where we see injustices that we just want to be made right, I think that there's a renewal that is promised to come someday where God is going to do that. And there's going to be a resurrection, not just of people coming back to life or whatever, but of just an overall renewal where things are made new again.
Good deal. What gives life its meaning?
I mean, to me, I think that there's a big category, and then there's a lot of subcategories. I think on a day-to-day basis, love, just relationships. I feel like, to me, some people, the idea of being alone is heaven. For me, being alone sounds like absolute hell. And so, to me, I'm just like, I think that meaning is in relationships, it's in love, it's in just being with other people that you care about, and all that kind of stuff. But I also think that that ultimately what gives life its meaning in maybe the darkest times or whatever is just like, is there a God? And if there is, if he exists, what does that mean? And I think that it means everything.
Awesome. Here's the last question. Made it through the top 12. What is love?
Love is, I don't remember all of these, but I appreciate the fact that the Greek language has 4 different words for love, where we only have 1. And I think all 4 have their unique meanings and give value to that word. And so there's one, eros, which is like erotic, eros. So there's sex love, or kind of sexual love. There's phileo, which is, I think that's like affection, or like friendship, affection. And there's some other one that I don't remember. And then there's agape. And agape is like kind of an unconditional love. It's like no matter what, I'm for you. And so I think all 4 of those, even though I can't remember the third one, kind of work together to give a complete version of love. But I feel like ultimately love is just, it's everything. Like, I don't think it's just one thing. I think some people would say love is laying down your life for someone, or loving someone no matter what. And I would say, yes, that is one element of love. I also think love is friendship and just really liking the person. Not just I love you but I don't like you right now, but also like I love you and I like you right now. I think that's also gives love its fullness. And I also think like a really, really awesome form of love is sex. For me, with for my wife, just that's a level of love and intimacy and knowing one another that I don't have with anyone else, and that's important.
There you go.
So
awesome. Well, that was the top 12. Where can people find more out about you? Follow you, see your stuff.
Yeah. I'm on Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. You can find all the links and all the whatever's on my website, my blog, which is honestchristian.org. I've got a blog there. I've got some cool resources and a couple free ebooks that I've written about different topics that kind of go a little deeper than my blog can, and things like that. So, yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Ken, for being on the show. Really appreciate your time and your honesty, and it was a great conversation.
Yeah, it was.
Next week on Contentious Talks.
I've always been a performer. I was the oldest of, in my family. I was also the oldest grandchild. There was the oldest granddaughter, I should say. So I was always thrown in front of the family to do something, whether that was singing or dancing, and I just went with it. I really enjoyed it. Acting is everywhere, whether it's voice acting or, like they said, commercial work. Everything you see, those are actors. Rarely are they the real people.
Right.
I mean, Chick-fil-A uses real people, I will tell you that, because I almost got hired from them once, and then they found out I was an actor and said, "Oh, we can't use you. We want our customers to know that these are real people." And I'm like, "But I'm real and I love Chick-fil-A." They're like, "No, you're an actor." What acting has taught me, or wanting or trying to be in the public eye has taught me, is that you have to know who you are, know what you stand for, and I want to say commit to it, but I also say never say never. Because as you age, you change.
Right.
But just know who you are and be comfortable in that, but also be comfortable with learning and unlearning things. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing for me when I post things on social media is, am I doing it out of love? Because that's who I want to be, regardless of who you are. And if I disagree with you, I want to be a loving person. I want to be known as being a kind person, but I also want to be known as somebody who stood up for what she believed in.
Sure. Hey guys, thank you for listening to this week's episode of Contentious Talks. Did you like the episode? If so, please consider sharing this podcast with your friends and family. To get notified about new episodes, be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to connect more, like Contentious Talks on Facebook. To support Contentious Talks and for more content, consider joining the Contentious Collective for as little as $1 a month. To do so, visit contentioustalks.com today. Contentious Talks is produced, hosted, filmed, and edited by Ryan Malinoski. Contentious Talks, copyright 2020, all rights reserved.